Well, here we are back following our container from the Port of Long Beach up to Barstow, where it will be switched out, classified, and sent to its distribution center in St. George. The Barstow yard is really huge and amazing, or I should probably say the Barstow yards,
right? Because
there's a couple of them. The one yard is really just for classifying and breaking up these big freight trains that come up out of Los Angeles. And then there's another complete yard that's just as big as that one that's used for other purposes as well. So it's an amazing place, Barstow, and for the rail fans, should be a good deal of fun. Well, last week, if you recall, we went to the Port of Los Angeles, the big, huge, massive Port of Los Angeles, which is about the same size as Manhattan. And we looked at some of these huge Chinese cargo ships that are arriving there with all kinds of Mardi Gras beads and computer monitors and television sets. And we watched some of these containers being loaded off of the ships and onto the dock. They're loaded onto little temporary vehicles and then very, very quickly shuffled off onto truck frames, or much more likely onto flat cars to form double-stack railroad trains. If you were to take all of these containers and lay them out end to end, it'd be about 8 miles long. So we're talking about a lot of trains. We got all this cool footage with this nifty little drone, the high art of screwing around that flies. Now, just north of the harbor is Santa Monica, and this is the Santa Monica Pier. The Santa Monica Pier is just sort of a fun, goofy place to go hang out. It's full of all kinds of weird and crazy people. But the coolest thing, I think, about the pier is that once upon a time, it was the westernmost terminal of Route 66, America's highway that stretched from this amusement pier all the way to Chicago. Route 66 was a major transportation corridor out of Los Angeles and up Cajon Pass to Barstow. It paralleled the original railroad of Santa Fe and the Southern Pacific. This has now become probably America's most important transportation corridor, because all of these goods out of the Port of Los Angeles, 70% of all of the imported goods to the whole of North America, have to come out of the Port of Los Angeles and get out to the rest of the continent. And most of it travels up that railroad line to Barstow. Today, that railroad line is part of the Burlington Northern Santa Fe network. And these trains are currently heading out to San Bernardino. There's a little bit of switching that goes on there, and then they'll be heading on to Barstow, where they're switched out and distributed across the whole rest of North America. This is the rather steep canyon of Cajon Pass. All of this material has to travel up this grade between San Bernardino and Barstow. Barstow was always a major hub on the Santa Fe Railroad. This is the station, but the largest part of it isn't the station at all. It's the Harvey House. Harvey houses were these really large restaurants, sort of equally distributed along the Santa Fe line. This is because in the early days, it was thought that the easiest way to feed the passengers was to let them get off the train and grab a decent meal in a decent restaurant. So it all had to be done very, very, very fast. And these restaurants were set up so that people could come in there, an entire trainload of people, grab a really fast meal and get back on their train and head on down the line. They hired young girls to work in the restaurants, and they housed them right at the restaurants. They called them Harvey girls. Well, whatever. The restaurants themselves were really nice, and people really enjoyed this as opposed to getting a meal in a conventional dining car. This particular Harvey House at Barstow is still here. It's not used as a restaurant, unfortunately, anymore. but man, you can really see what an elegant, wonderful place it was to grab a meal. Well, while the Harvey House is no longer used, the Barstow yards have never been busier. As a matter of fact, America's railroads have never, ever been as busy as they are right now. Between the containerized freight that's being moved all over the nation and the rather explosive oil that's being moved around, today's railroads are just simply on fire, unfortunately sometimes literally. At any rate, they've never been busier, and this doesn't seem to be a trend that's going to stop anytime soon. The yards here at Barstow are just positively massive, and they're really busy. Trains are arriving here really every few minutes, coming up mostly from Los Angeles. This is one of 3 huge yards here. You can see the other one kind of off to the right and extending off into the distance. And there's another yard almost the same size as this one behind us, past a little hill over by the passenger depot and the Harvey House. Now you can see that most of this freight isn't even containerized freight. Lots and lots and lots of things are moving around by rail out there. All manner of grain and of course oil, and notice that there's some automobile racks moving here. The railroads are moving the nation's goods, and finally the nation is producing some goods, and stuff is in fact getting moved around because stuff is in fact now being sold again after the big collapse of 2008. Until recently, the busiest time the railroads had ever seen was World War II. And because there's a notion that railroads are kind of declining and are yesterday's technology, a lot of people were saying that they would never ever achieve anything even vaguely like the amount of business they did during World War II. Well, they slid right on past the amount of business that they were doing in World War II, and they're now doing much, much more business than then. This is the busiest our nation's railroads have ever been. Just in this shot, you can see 2 trains heading out of Barstow going north. Just absolutely amazing how much traffic is moving around on the railroads these days. Well, we next took the fun little drone up to the Walmart distribution center in St. George, Utah. Now, places like St. George don't have rail service, and so all of the freight that comes up here has to be removed from the trains in places like Barstow and San Bernardino and loaded onto truck frames instead, or just repackaged into semi-trailers. And then it's distributed to places like this, where it is then redistributed out to all of the different Walmarts all over the country, where you can buy it and display it in your house and do whatever it is you're going to do with it. You know, the more I see this and the more we work on this film, the less intimidated I am by Chinese manufacturing. As long as things are going on in this country, it's all good. And if we want to compete with China making stuff like Mardi Gras beads, nothing's stopping us. Well, there you go, the classification yards at Barstow and the distribution center for Walmart. It's all pretty darn interesting and just amazing what it takes to get that little plastic Mardi Gras bead set that you bought at Walmart to the Walmart all the way from Shanghai. But there it is, pretty efficient system too,
Right.
and just a massive, massive thing to make all of that happen.
Right.
It's pretty darn cool. Well, if you haven't been over to the website, it's a cool website. You should go check it out. It's toymantelevision.com. And we're kind of building that thing out, adding some more features to it that you wouldn't find on the channel. And that's going to be fun as it builds out and becomes bigger and more diverse and weirder and more interesting than it already is. And but if you just want to stick to YouTube, you can do that too. You can access the channel with the little blue rocket ship right down below the screen here. If you're not in full screen, just click on it, bounces you over to the channel. Quick, easy navigation. If you haven't subscribed, you want to subscribe to the channel, and the easiest way to do that is to click on the little blue button that's right there. See it that says subscribe? And that will subscribe you to the channel, and it'll take you over to the channel, and you can watch like 70 other movies that are over there, and more coming every Sunday morning. So do that, subscribe to the channel. Well, we're not sure how you found this particular movie on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring. And we will see you here again next Sunday with some more significant and informative screwing around. We'll see you then. Bye.